welcome to another episode of the Marvel and DC Retrospective Podcast. This is another episode of Midlife Crisis because we are continuing the Millennium event today. This is part 3 of the Millennium event, of a 5-part event. And so if you haven't seen part 1 and part 2 and listened to them, go listen to them now before listening to this podcast, because a lot has happened and you're going to be confused as to what's going on, because we are in the middle of it now. So let's just get straight to it. We're going to start with Millennium issue 4 today. We're covering 2 issues. We're going to be covering a bunch of issues, but right now we are covering 2 separate issues. We got Millennium issue 4, and then we've got the Teen Titans Spotlight, which stars Aqualad and Aquaman, which is a tie-in. So let's start with Millennium issue 4. Obviously, it's written by Steve Englehart still, with art by Joe Staton. We leave off right where the Infinity Inc. tie-in left off, which in that, Infinity Inc. went and captured Floronic Man in swamps of Louisiana. So they've brought Floronic Man back to the Green Lantern Citadel. And Thomas Carmichael has also been brought back by Green Lantern. So the 8 remaining surviving New Guardians are finally united. And Batman is kind of watching this happen, and he's like, I don't like this. And they're all kind of just having a bit of a yarn, just talking to each other. Floronic Man is talking about how he's the chosen one. He's like, I'm the chosen one. I am part of the green, and with the green, I will eventually take over the world with my power, and just saying shit like that. And they're all kind of ignoring him, or just being like, why are you being such a weirdo, dude? Shut up. And all of the New Guardians are talking to each other, and that one guy, the one New Guardian, the racist one, is like, I'm amazed that I'm the only white man in this scheme. You there, you look normal enough under that mask. The Blue Dwarf can't really be settling for these lunatics, mongrels, and degenerates, can he? And he's talking to the Flash, and the Flash is like, to be honest, I don't even understand why they picked you. And Kilowog's just laughing. And he's like, no, you're all corrupted in the West, I had hoped. Well, you'll never corrupt South Africa long after you've been swept by communist mongrels. We'll be strong. And Wally's just like, I rest my case. And so yeah, that guy is just being a massive douche. And I sincerely hope he dies. I think he does. I don't know yet, obviously, because I haven't read the whole thing, but I wouldn't be surprised if he dies. So Batman's continually thinking to himself about how he just doesn't like the situation. He's just like, I don't like anything that's going on right now. Not only do we have to team up with Floronic Man, who I really hate, but Firestorm and Booster Gold are currently working for the Manhunters. Superman has been tied up with some problems. Tony Young and Regan are pushing us back, and Jim Gordon was replaced by a Manhunter robot. What we need is a strike at their heads, not their minds. They use the shadows, but so do I. The difference is, I'm not a detective. I should be able to find what's hidden. Wait, Green Lantern, I need your computer. And so Green Lantern tells Batman, where the computer is, and Batman goes to log into the computer, and he's like, and Floronic Man was just captured in the bayou. And so he decides to head off to find a way to... He decides to fly off somewhere. Oh yeah, he decides to head to fly off to Belle Reve Federal Prison in Louisiana, because he wants to go there and investigate on where the Manhunters could possibly be. So he heads off to Belle Reve. And meanwhile, the Manhunters are having a little meeting, doing their Manhunter thing, just being like, nobody escapes the Manhunters. And Firestorm shows up with Ferguson. It took them, I don't know how much time has passed, but it took them a long time for Firestorm to fly from Ferguson's lab, because they're just arriving now. If you remember, that happened in the tie-in. Meanwhile, Booster Gold is getting ready to,
I think he's getting ready to have like a meeting. Eventually they're going to have him like broadcast and speak on behalf of on behalf of the Manhunters, because the public will listen to a superhero. But he has a meeting with Manhunter, and the Manhunter basically tells him that like Captain Hadley, who was the Manhunter that was going to go and kill Captain Atom, that Booster Gold stopped, is going to be given the go-ahead to go after Captain Atom again, and the Manhunter is just like, I'm telling you this now because if you want to stop him and save your superhero friend, this is your choice. But depending on the choice you make, it really shows if you're going to be on our side. And Booster Gold's like, yeah, I'm not, like, you go ahead. Like, I'm not going to stop him from killing Captain Atom. Like, I am on your side. I don't care what happens to this time because I come from, like, I come from centuries from now. So, like, it doesn't even matter to me what happens. You know? So, Captain Atom is flying through, like, his base. He's talking about how, like, his son won't talk to him, and he's depressed about that. And while he's on his way there, he sees he sees General Ailing, who, if you know, is a Superman character. Not a Superman character. He's not a Superman character. He's like a character. He's like he's just a DC character. Like he's not like specific to any character's cast. He's just he shows up in everything, and he's kind of just he causes trouble for superheroes because he doesn't trust all superheroes. But Captain Ailing basically tells Captain Atom that Firestorm is on the side of the Manhunters, and that he's been seen in Louisiana, like the swamps of Louisiana. And so he tells Captain Atom to go after Firestorm and fight him. And Captain Atom's just like, can't we just get the like, I know that you put me on the GL as like a mole, but can't we just get the GL? Like, I could just ask the GL to help me. And Eileen's just like, no, we need you to do it alone. We don't want the GL getting involved. And so Captain Atom reluctantly agrees and heads off to Louisiana to find Firestorm. And that's when Captain Hadley shows up, and he's just like, hey, where's Captain Atom? I was just going to talk to him. And Aileen's like, I already sent him off to Louisiana, and Hadley's just like, shit. Well, that's kind of screwed up my plan. I guess I better talk to the Manhunters and see how we're going to get around this little hiccup. And so we head back to the Green Lantern Citadel, where Harupa and is it Naruto? Or Nadura, the Zamron, they show up, and they basically ask the New Guardians, this is the last time we're going to ask you this. Are you with us? Now's your chance to back out if you want to. Do you want to back out, or are you going to be a New Guardian? And they all agree. And the racist guy is like thinking to himself, I'm not turning back until I have the power they're offering. Then I'll decide. Because basically the Guardians are saying, like, we're going to give you superpowers now, but only if you agree to help us. So they all agree, including Floronic Man. And the racist guy kind of takes the leadership. He's like, oh, alright everyone, follow me. And Nadira just kind of, like, has a weird, like... Oh, Nadia, that's it. Not Nadira. Nadia has, like, a weird pain in her head, and then it passes. And what's his name? I'm blanking on his name. So you got Martian Manhunter, and then you've got, what's his name? I'll just call him Scott, because for some reason I am blanking on his name. There are so many characters in DC, it's really... Every now and then you just blank, even if it's a character that you know, that you usually know the name of. I've gotta think for it. I want to remember the name of this character. I don't know why I'm blanking. I've talked about them so much. You would think I would remember their name. What's his name? Mr. Miracle. God damn it. Mr. Miracle and Martian Manhunter are talking about how Nadia's been acting weird. And then Mr. Miracle is kind of like, wait a minute, your last name's Manhunter. And Martian Manhunter's hey, the Terrans are the ones who gave me that name. Like, I'm not a Manhunter. And so we go to Belle Reve, where the Suicide Squad are all gathered. We got different members. We got like Slipknot, Bronze Tiger, Deadshot, Captain Boomerang, Rick Flag, and then we got the Privateer. Yeah, the Privateer, who is Mark Shaw. And as you know, Mark Shaw used to be a vigilante called the Manhunter, and he used to work for the Manhunters, but right now he is the Privateer. So John Economos is talking about how, like, he believes that there is a Manhunter base in Louisiana, so he's going to send the Suicide Squad to Louisiana so they can take the Manhunters head on. He also mentions the fact that, like, they have a bomb that they're going to set off at the base, but it's big enough that it could probably end in the Suicide Squad being killed by it as well. And and he's just like, Flag is just like, Waller at least used to give us some odds, Economos. It just sounds like we're being sent into there to die this time. And Deadshot's just like, maybe she saw that I was getting bored. And Slipknot and Captain Boomerang don't like the idea of going into the Manhunter base, especially with this bomb that could possibly kill them. And John Economos is like, I thought you wouldn't agree, so you two are wearing the explosive bracelets. And so they're forced to put the bracelets on. And Captain Boomerang is 100% sure that Mark Shaw is still working for the Manhunters, so he doesn't trust him. Mark Shaw is just like, I'm not a Manhunter. You know, I swear, I'm not a Manhunter. So Captain Boomerang and Slipknot get the bracelets put on, and then the Suicide Squad head off to Louisiana to find the Manhunter base. And then Batman shows up to talk to John, and he manages to get John to tell him where Floronic Man is, or like where Floronic Man was. He was supposed to lie to Batman and tell him that Floronic Man, like, wasn't in Louisiana when the man, like, wasn't taken to Louisiana where the Manhunters were. But he kind of fumbles and tells Batman the truth, and he's like, shit, I'm gonna be working overtime for this. And so Batman heads off to find a boat, because he needs to get, the only way he's gonna get to Louisiana is by boat. Like, to the swamps, I mean, is he's in Louisiana. He needs a boat in order to get to the swamps. So he heads off to find one. Meanwhile, there's this character named Madame Xanadu, who is like a tarot card reader. She has a Manhunter mask that she's fascinated by, and she's like collected it. And then this guy shows up, and he wants to get a tarot reading. So she gives him a tarot reading, and he asks her about like what she thinks about the Manhunters. And she's like, oh, the Manhunters, like, I have one of their masks. You want to see it? And she goes and grabs the mask. And as she's talking about it and, like, grabbing the mask, he comes up from behind her and hits her across the head, knocks her out, and takes the mask. And then just outside, like, Jim Corrigan, who is usually possessed by the Spectre, because he's normally dead. But at this point in time, Jim Corrigan is not dead, and instead he works alongside the Spectre, and so the Spectre isn't always possessing him. I think the Spectre can still possess him if it wants to, but right now they're kind of working side by side. So Jim Corrigan shows up to Madame Xanadu's place and finds her knocked out, and that's when she tells him that a Manhunter is in his office. So he runs up to find the Manhunter, and he's like, hold her right there! And the Manhunter kind of like throws some shit at him and reveals that he's looking for the Spectre because he knows that Jim Corrigan is the Spectre. And so like eventually Jim manages to get the he tries to go after the Manhunter, but he jumps out of his office window and to the floors down below. And upon leaving his office, Jim runs into the Spectre, and the Spectre reveals that he's going to go after the Manhunters because the Manhunters, it's his goal to deal with, he's an angel of vengeance, and the Manhunters are, evil, so he has to hunt them down and deal with them. So he decides to help Jim find the Manhunters. And so Jim and the Spectre go to a, tarot reading, and Madame Xanadu just can't figure out where the Manhunters are with her tarot cards, and so Spectre decides to help her by touching the tarot cards and, her globe at the same time, and using, his mystical energy, he figures out that, the Manhunter's base is in Louisiana, and so Jim and the Spectre decide to go to the swamps together to find the Manhunter base. Meanwhile, Harbinger is caught in the Manhunter's base, and the Grandmaster comes in. She's hooked to a power dampening machine. Grandmaster comes in and basically mocks at her, saying that the Earth's heroes are going to die and all that kind of shit. And he notices that he's got a key on his side, and it kind of falls out of his back pocket. And so when he leaves, she tries to get out of the machine by grabbing the key, which she successfully does with her leg. And she manages to get out, but a Manhunter, as she's trying to escape, a Manhunter appears and is like, "You're not getting out of here." She's like, "Ah, shit." So she jumps into an air vent and comes across the Grandmaster again. And the Grandmaster is like, "You'll never leave us alive. There's no way you can escape from the Manhunters. We are everywhere." And so, she basically just had an unsuccessful escape attempt. Floronic Man is complaining about... meanwhile, Floronic Man is complaining about the meeting that he just had. He doesn't like having long talks with these other heroes. He just wants to take over the world. And so he comes across a Manhunter, and Floronic Man is like, "I'm the one who can use the aliens to bring the world completely into the green." And the Manhunter's like, "Yes, but not yet. You must contain yourself among the chosen until we are ready to make maximum use of your infiltration. Then you can strike at will." And then meanwhile, there's a lot of shit happening right now. Meanwhile, this is panel by panel. This is literally one page is about Harbinger, and then we're right on to Floronic Man. And now we're at Batman, where he's gone to a dock. He's talking to a boat owner, and the guy lets Batman use his boat. He's like, "Hey, are you really the Batman?" And Batman's like, "I am, and now I must fly." And so he jumps into the boat and heads off into the swamp to chase after the Suicide Squad. And meanwhile, the Suicide Squad are also in the swamps. Captain Atom has also showed up in the swamps, and the Spectre and Jim Corrigan have also showed up in the swamps. And so it's assumed that these four parties are going to collide with one another. So we're going to see Batman collide with the Suicide Squad, Captain Atom, Spectre and Jim. They're all going to have a big fight or something, or they're all going to team up against the Manhunters, against Firestorm and the Manhunters and shit. So that sounds really interesting. And that's where issue 4 ends. We end on that cliffhanger, which will probably be continued in... I think it's continued in tie-ins. So after that, now that issue 4 of Millennium is over, we move on to Teen Titans Spotlight, which is connected to the Manhunters, quite heavily in fact. Teen Titans Spotlight is a spin-off series to Teen Titans, where it focuses on a single member of the team and an adventure that they have. This issue focuses on Aqualad and guest stars Aquaman. It's written by Dan Mishkin and Gary Cohn, and the artist is Art Thibet. So we start off how I'm guessing most Aquaman comics start off. Aqualad is fighting an evil octopus. I wonder how many Aquaman stories have started off with them fighting some kind of giant fish. But they're fighting a giant octopus, and Aqualad is, like, in trouble. But then Aquaman comes up and, like, uses his telekinesis to get the... or, like, not telekinesis. I'd say it's, like, fish telepathy to help free Aqualad from the grasp of the octopus. To tell the octopus to let him go. And, so yeah, he saves Aqualad, and, Aqualad really hates the fact that Aquaman saved him, because he's like, I had powers, like, I had telepathy powers, my powers were enough to fight Mento, which happened in another issue, I don't like the fact that you're saving me, Aquaman, but lately my telepathic powers just haven't been as good as they used to be. And then the fish start acting weird. They're like, wait a minute, what's wrong with the fish? And then a giant explosion happens, which sends Aqualad and Aquaman smashing into a wall. So they decide to go and look for what the explosion was caused by. Aquaman already senses that it was caused by, like, possibly human intervention or something. And they find these giant jellyfishes that are being piloted by manhunters. And when they go up to the jellyfishes, they get, like, zapped by the tentacles. And they're like, damn, like, it zaps them so hard that they get knocked out for a sec. Because they were, like, trying to go up to the jellyfish to see, like, what's going on. And then one of the jellyfishes, like, came from behind them and zapped them and knocked them out. And so we find that the manhunters are underwater because they're trying to set a ship, like a alien vessel, free from, like, a cliff underwater. Like, underwater terrain. And they took care of Aquaman and Aqualad because they don't want them getting in the way of their scheme. And they knew that Aquaman and Aqualad were going to get in the way. And so far they've been dealt with, so they're not worried about them anymore. But obviously Aqualad and Aquaman are still alive, so they plan on stopping them. They find the manhunters working on the ship, and they start fighting them. They summon a bunch of fish to help them fight the manhunters. The manhunters straight up just kill the fish really easily. It's kind of sad. You see them, like, shooting beams through sharks and hammerheads, just straight up killing them. There's a dolphin, I think, that gets killed. But Aquaman and Aqualad go in and they start just beating the shit out of manhunters. And because they're really strong, they're able to smash the manhunters' faces just by punching them. Aqualad literally knocks the head off of a Manhunter. This is all underwater, so it just goes even more against, like, just how strong Aquaman and Aqualad are, that, like, they can punch a robot's head off underwater. And then these new Manhunters show up, and they have, like, augments and upgrades that allow them to fight better underwater. And so Aqualad and Aquaman start fighting them, and you would think that these ones would beat them, but Aquaman and Aqualad still beat these Manhunter variations as well. Not as easily as the other ones, but, like, it's not that much harder for them to beat them. And so they beat them, and Aquaman almost gets tangled up in the tentacles of another jellyfish, but Aqualad manages to save him. And Aquaman decides to try and use his telepathy to take control of the jellyfishes because they are fish. But when he uses it, he gets a knockback shock from them that zaps his brain and knocks him out. And so Aqualad is like, alright, it's up to me. Maybe... Okay, I've got a plan. It's pretty crazy, but it's my only chance. If I don't succeed in this, I'm going to die anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the jellyfish shock me and maybe it'll act kind of like shock therapy, and it will unlock my my telepathy powers again, like my fish telepathy powers. It's worth a shot. And so he does that. He grabs onto the tentacles, gets electrocuted by them, and it works. It brings back his telepathic powers, his fish telepathy, and he uses it to call a bunch of like whales and sharks and shit to come and help him. And then he uses his powers against the jellyfish to take control of their minds, which fucks up the Manhunters that are currently in control of them and causes them to explode, which then sets the I think he uses his telepathy to cause the jellyfish to then electrocute the Manhunters that are controlling them, causing them to explode and then setting them free. And then the jellyfish start like herding the Manhunters away to a cave. And then the Manhunters all self-destruct and destroy themselves. And it's assumed that they also destroy the jellyfish as well, or like a bunch of them. And so Aquaman and Aqualad are like, shit, the Manhunters just killed themselves. But hey, at least we stopped them from doing whatever they were doing, like from getting this alien ship. And so it ends with Aquaman being like, Garth, like, you got your powers back. You saved the day. Like, I'm really proud of you. And Aqualad's like, yeah, you know what? I'm proud of me too. And so that's the end of that tie-in. Just a fun little side story, and it might even become really important later. Like, we always find that events in these tie-ins do get brought up in the main story. Probably if Aquaman ever shows up in the main story, they will mention that. But the next tie-in after Aquaman is the Action Comics tie-in, which I think at this point in time, Spectre didn't have his own comic series, or like his comics were cancelled, or it was just before he got his own series. So his stories were currently being told in Action Comics. So essentially the next one is a Spectre tie-in, but it's also in Action Comics. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the Spectre does when it comes to fighting the Manhunters. So let's check this out. So we get the Action Comics tie-in, which after reading it I discovered it stars both Spectre and Superman, which makes sense because it's Action Comics. This actually takes place out of order. It was released after Millennium Week 4, but it takes place during or like right after the Superman, like the Adventures of Superman issue, where he went to Smallville and discovered Dr. Whitney being a Manhunter and just, stopped him. So Spectre isn't in the swamp, he's above Smallville. So the way we start off the comic, it's written by John Byrne, by the way. And with art by John Byrne. So we start off with the Spectre. He jumps out of a plane. That's literally the start of the comic. He jumps out of a plane into Smallville. And when he arrives in Smallville, he realizes that it's a lot quieter than he expected. He goes on to explain everything that's happened with the Manhunters and all that, their origin, all that kind of stuff. And as he flies through Smallville, he finds what he's looking for, which is the Manhunter ship from Adventures of Superman, the one that Superman crashed into the ground. And alongside it, he finds a lot of people, and then a lot of a lot of alive people, and then a lot of dead people. The dead people are all of the children in Smallville, because they were all controlled by the Manhunters, and upon the death of Dr. Whitney, who was the one that transferred all of their minds to Manhunter minds, him dying killed all of the children. They were all dead. And Superman is like so pissed. He's like, what have I done? Like, this is all my fault. And like, my parents Like, my foster parents know that it's also partly their fault, because them finding me in my ship is the reason this happened in the first place. This is probably the darkest day in my life. And then Spectre's like, hey, don't worry, Superman. You see, the thing is that, like, they're not dead. The children aren't dead. In fact, I know that their souls, I can sense that their souls are still alive somewhere else. And I can take you to that place. But you're going to have to sacrifice your powers in order to do so, because I'm going to send you to another realm where these children probably are. And while you're there, you're not going to have any powers. You're going to be vulnerable. So are you ready for that? And Superman's like, of course, I'll do anything to save these people. You know, I'd give up my life to save the people that I love. And so Spectre sends Superman to this other realm, to this, like, limbo, because he explained that, like, the children's souls are currently in limbo, which is between life and death. So they're not dead, but they're not alive. And so he ends up in this other realm. He comes across Lana Lang, and Lana doesn't realize that she's technically dead at the moment. She also refers to Superman as Clark, and Clark is like, man, she doesn't realize that she's talking to Superman, and nobody around us realizes that Lana and I are talking to each other. And then the Spectre shows up, and he's like, don't worry, Superman, like, Lana can't see me, you know, I'm just in my spectral form. And that's when he explains about the fact that they're in limbo. And then a Manhunter shows up, and it's Dr. Whitney. And Superman is the only one who can see him as a Manhunter, like, in his Manhunter form. Everyone else, including Lana, just sees him as, you know, nice guy Dr. Whitney. And he explains that, like, this is his realm that he created upon destroying himself. And that because he has control over it, he can do whatever he wants, and nobody else will be any the wiser. He's like, and I can do this, and he hits Superman across the face, and nobody sees him do it except for Superman. So he's beating the shit out of Superman, and then the Spectre comes in. He's like, all right, that's enough, and he goes really massive, and he grabs Dr. Whitney, and then he, like, throws him into the ground. And he's like, now that you're out of commission, I'm gonna possess your body. And so Spectre uses his powers to possess the body of Dr. Whitney, and then uses the possession to cause Dr. Whitney to pull his own body apart so that he explodes. He causes Dr. Whitney to, like, pull his body apart, and Dr. Whitney explodes, which pulls everybody out of the limbo, and all of the children wake up and they're all alive again. And that's when Spectre, Superman's like, how? Like, how are they alive? And Spectre's like, they were never truly dead, Superman. But come, let us depart this place before the joy these people feel is replaced by a curiosity we will not wish to satisfy. And it's really funny, because in the next page, there's, like, a couple of children, because this is taking place on Halloween. There are 3 children that are trick-or-treating. One of them is dressed as Darth Vader, one of them's a witch, and the other one's dressed as Batman. But it's, like, 60s Batman. And they're trick-or-treating, and they're, like, sneaking around the house. And then the Spectre's right there, and he's, like, towering over them. He's like, And they're all like, ah! And they run away, and Spectre kind of smiles at them running away. He's got, like, a little shit-eating grin. Superman's like, Spectre, you didn't explain, like, you were in the middle of explaining to us what happened. And that's when the Spectre explains exactly what went on with the children in Smallville. So the way to lay it out, quick and simple, is that the Manhunters found a way to create another personality for the children of Smallville. So they had 2 personalities. Their real one and their Manhunter one. And the Manhunter one personality took over. And the Manhunter personality had its own memories and everything. It was like a separate person. And the Manhunter personality is what died. So that died, but they didn't. Their actual personality did not die, which is why killing Dr. Whitney didn't kill them. It only killed their Manhunter personas, which is why they're still alive. So that's what he explains. There's way more text than that, but like it's summarized like that. It's as simple as I can make it. And then Spectre's just like, now that I've explained everything, we've got to go because we have stuff to do for the Millennium. You know, we gotta help with the Millennium now. So let's go. And so Spectre and Superman fly off to go and help be a part of the event. And that's the end of the tie-in. It's not bad, but it's not like amazing. It's pretty fun seeing Spectre and Superman team up and seeing Spectre like use some of his like power. But I will say that like this issue is a bit of a drag because like I skipped a lot of pages while I was recounting it because a lot of pages in this are just them going over stuff that we've already learned or flashbacks. There's a lot of flashbacks in it, a lot of filler. But other than that, the stuff that isn't filler, pretty enjoyable. I liked it. It was a good conclusion to like what we had previously said. And the next tie-in that we're going to be talking about is the Captain Atom tie-in, which guest stars Firestorm, the Nuclear Man. It's written by Cary Bates, best known for his being the writer of The Flash for a really long time, for like 150 issues. He wrote Barry Allen all the way up until Crisis. And it's also co-written by Greg Weisman. And you would probably know him from like a lot of like he's written probably most of your favorite childhood shows like Gargoyles, Spectacular Spider-Man, Young Justice, like so much stuff. So as we've learnt from the previous Millennium issue, Captain Atom is currently going after Nuclear Man. He's been sent by General Erling to go to the Louisiana swamps to find Firestorm. Because Firestorm is under the control of the Manhunters. So he finds Firestorm, and Captain Atom, he doesn't really like Firestorm. He has kind of like a rivalry with him. They've already fought 2 times before, but he realizes that Firestorm is acting differently than he remembers. Like, he has amnesia. He even brings up the fact that he thinks that this Firestorm might actually be brain damaged, which that didn't age well. Yeah, that's one of the things that he brings up as like a possibility of like what Firestorm, like the reason why Firestorm is acting different is because he ended up in a giant nuclear explosion and maybe he's brain damaged. But in another page, he comes to the conclusion, he's just like, maybe he's not brain damaged. Maybe he is just like under the control of the Manhunters. So Firestorm traps Captain Atom in a bubble sphere. And they make it pretty clear in this issue that, like, I think it's made pretty clear that Firestorm is supposed to be depicted as being, he's just more powerful than Captain Atom. Like, Captain Atom cannot beat Firestorm in a fight. The most he can do is try and just talk some sense into him. And that's exactly what this issue is all about. So Captain Atom gets trapped inside this sphere, and he tries to talk Firestorm down. And Firestorm reveals that he knows everything about Captain Atom. And that the reason he's not going to listen to him is because Captain Atom is a big liar. And that, like, he knows that he's like, I know that you're working for the government and that they have you as a mole in the Justice League. So I'm not going to listen to a word you say. And Captain Atom's just like, shit, like, he knows everything. That's going to set me back. Like, that's going to make this a lot harder than it should be. So Captain Atom comes up with the idea of just trying to appeal to Firestorm's human side by giving him some, like, life lessons of, like, by telling him some stories that could possibly help Firestorm understand Captain Atom's point of view, that he shouldn't be following the orders of the Manhunters. So he's just like, let me tell you a story about a little boy. And this little boy loved planes, but he had a fear of flying. Like a massive fear of flying. Loves planes, hates heights, hates flying. And one day his mum took him to see his dad, and like they drove to an airfield, and that's when his dad revealed that he's a pilot. And he has a surprise for him, for his son. And so this dad and his son get in the plane and they fly off, and it helps the son overcome his fear of flying. And so his fear of flying is cured. He still loves planes, and he decides to become a member of the Air Force and become a pilot. And then a mysterious accident happens, and that boy becomes Captain Atom, because that boy was me. I was that boy. So Firestorm's like, so you're telling me that your story has made me realize it would be bad if anyone, even the Manhunters, wanted to prevent mankind from reaching its true potential. It's like, I think I made some headway, but not enough. And then Firestorm's like, but the Manhunters are my creators. They have given me no reason not to trust them. And so Captain Atom is like, okay, let me tell you another story. So back earlier in my career, when I had a completely different costume that was like yellow and red, and I had white hair, and I wasn't silver, I got sent on a mission to find these two guys that had apparently stolen some technology from an army base. And the army had sent a helicopter after them, and I had overheard the general ordering them to shoot them on sight, to shoot these two guys. So, and I disagreed with the decision that the general had decided to make. So, I decided, I gotta find these guys before the guys in the helicopter can find them and kill them. So I did that. I flew really fast. I just went really fast. And I flew and I found the van really fast. And like, I found the guys inside it really fast. And then I discovered... I'm sorry, I can't take it seriously. I'm half taking this seriously and I'm not. It's good. So I found the two guys. I'm still talking from Captain Atom's point of view. I found the two guys, and it turns out that they both had radiation poisoning, because it turns out that they were two of the last people to be forced to watch like a nuclear bomb explode during a test, and it was back before they realized what radiation does to people, and so they have radiation sickness. And they stole this technology so that they could broadcast themselves and reveal their dilemma and force the government to help them. And basically, show that the government is like dirty and schemy and they're just awful people, and get what they deserve. So Captain Atom is like, you know what, I'm on their side. So I gotta stop those people from killing them. And so the helicopters try to shoot a missile at the two dudes, and Captain Atom stops the missile from hitting them and allows the guys to broadcast their story. And the general was so pissed with me with the decision that I made. But you know what? I made the choice that I wanted to make, and it was the right one. And that is why you shouldn't follow orders if you don't believe in them, Firestorm. That is the lesson of the story. And Firestorm is like, you're wasting your time telling me all of these stories, Captain Atom. I'm never going to believe you, even if what you say is true. I know everything about you. I know how much of a liar you are. I know all of your lies. They told me everything about your past. And so he creates a bunch of toxic gas to, like, cause Captain Atom to pass out. He, like, traps him inside the field with all this gas. Captain Atom passes out. He was supposed to show up at a broadcasting studio for an interview, but because he's busy with Firestorm, they are planning on, like, General Hadley, who we know as a Manhunter, is planning to go on broadcast in Captain Atom's place, and in doing so, he plans to reveal Captain Atom's identity and, like, all of his, like, lies and stuff on television to get revenge against him. Like, to you know, ruin his life, because that's what the Manhunters are trying to do. And Hadley is, like, while he's waiting to have his interview, he's outside having a smoke, and General Island comes over to him, and Hadley's like, here we are. Just you and me. And, you've been a thorn in the side of the Manhunters for a while now, so I think it's only thing that the Manhunters try to kill you. And he, like, pulls out this device. It's like a Manhunter gun. He goes to shoot Eiling, who's just, like, having a smoke. And it's kind of hard to see what happens, but I'm assuming that General Hadley gets shot. You don't see Eiling pull out a gun. I think it's supposed to be a moment of, like, I think the cigarette that... I think it's a moment of, like, General Eiling pulled out a gun, shot Hadley, and then put it back in his pocket so fast that, like, you don't even see him pull it out. Like, it's like one panel, Hadley gets shot, next panel, Eiling is there with his hand still in his pocket. Oh, wait, no. Oh... You can see... So, he shot... Alright, he shot it through the pocket. Sorry, the first time I read this, it was really confusing. So, General Eiling shot Hadley through his coat pocket while his hand was in his pocket, which is fucking awesome. The reason why I didn't know that is because the gun... Like, the smoke from the gun is the same color as his coat. So, it's just, like, red smoke on a red coat. So, I couldn't even see it. I just assumed that he, like, shot him and we just didn't get to see it. Or, like, he put the gun away really fast or something. But nah, he shot through the coat. So Hadley is dead. Eiling's just like, yeah, fuck you. And, so Firestorm just decides to lecture Captain Atom because he's like, you spent this whole time lecturing me, I'm going to lecture you. These are all the lies that you've told. This is all of the things that you've lied about. Like, you know, I don't trust you. You're a massive liar. Like, I hate you. Like, I'm never gonna trust you. I'm always only gonna trust the Manhunters because at least they've been telling me, like, what I would consider to be the truth. Like, you know, I believe them over you, you know, you big liar. And, Captain Atom's just like, well, you know what? I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I will tell you literally everything about myself. No more lies. And so Captain Atom tells Firestorm everything. You know, he tells him about how he went on nationwide TV to tell the true to tell the fake true story about Captain Atom, like how it was all lies. He talks about the fact that he was actually convicted for murder and that the government used that against him to force him to work with him. And he explains to Firestorm that, like, he decided to work with the government because he was doing it for his children. Because he didn't want them to lose their father. Because if he didn't work for the government, he would be jailed for life because he was, you know, convicted for murder that happened back in, like, 1968. And it's when he mentions his kids that Firestorm pulls him out of the sphere. He's like, I don't understand. Like, why are you like, what changed your mind? And Firestorm is like, you know, while you were telling all of these things, you know, I could have just, none of that stuff phased my choice, like, phased me in the slightest, or made me reconsider. But it was when you mentioned your children that I decided I would change my mind, because I could sense how much you really cared about you really care about your children. And that's convinced me. Your love for your children has convinced me to join you against the Manhunters. And so Firestorm has agreed to not work for the Manhunters anymore. And he teams up with Captain Atom. And Captain Atom is like, cool, glad you're on my side. We got 10 minutes before the Suicide Squad's bomb blows up in Louisiana swamps and kills possibly a lot of people, including us. So we should go and stop it. Because as you know, Suicide Squad decided to go to Louisiana swamps to set off a bomb at the Manhunter's base so that they could try and destroy the Manhunters. Or to try and destroy Firestorm, I guess, is what they were trying to do. I think it's both. So they go off, and the bomb explodes, and together Captain Atom and Firestorm absorb the power of the bomb. And Firestorm turns a load of the bomb's like radiation into snow. And that's where the tie-in ends. He turns it into snow, and they have a little bit of a heart-to-heart. And Firestorm basically says, like, I got a lot to learn from you about, you know, compassion, being, like, human, and all that kind of stuff. Can you teach me more about being a compassionate hero? Being a true hero? And Captain Atom is like, yeah, you know, school's open. And he decides to take Firestorm on as his student again. And they head off together to, you know, be student and mentor. It's a really nice ending. And a pretty good tie-in issue. A lot of talking. Like, if you don't like wordy... If you don't like wordy comics, like, with not a lot of action, you're not going to like this. I'm just going to be straight up, you're not going to like this. But if you like characters having, like, deep conversation and just talking to one another, and that's the conflict, then you would probably enjoy this a lot. I just think that the relationship between Firestorm and Captain Atom is really interesting. Especially this version of Firestorm, who is not Ronnie Raymond at all. This is Firestorm without a separate personality and control. It's Firestorm in control of itself, you know? And it's interesting. So yeah, that's the end of the Captain Atom tie-in. And the next tie-in that we're going to be talking about is Detective Comics, which continues on from Millennium Week 4. And I think we're going to discover about what happened to Commissioner Gordon, and possibly see Batman find Commissioner Gordon and help him escape from wherever he's been taken to, because he was kidnapped. So we move on to Detective Comics. Now, this issue of Detective Comics can be a bit confusing timeline-wise, so I'll explain exactly what point in time we are in. So it takes place, like, most of it takes place after Millennium 4. But some of it takes place before. And there's a couple of things that are mentioned that we actually skip. But, like, Batman mentions that he did it already, but we just didn't get to see it. So, we start off before Millennium has started with Commissioner Gordon. And Commissioner Gordon This is before he's been fully replaced with a Manhunter, and before he's actually left, because it turns out he wasn't actually kidnapped. He went to Louisiana on his own. So it turns out that Commissioner Gordon used to be a member of the Navy. He had a Navy unit that he was in. He even went by his own code name, which was Nugent. There were other members: Garibaldi, Rosenfeld, Lilly, Hannah, and Madigan. Hannah and Madigan most recently died. So now there's only Lou, Rosenfeld, and Garibaldi left. And apparently, Garibaldi and Rosenfeld and Lou have all... Like, Lou's contacted Commissioner Gordon because there's been some trouble going on. And Rosenfeld is in trouble. And Garibaldi went to search for him. And apparently, he was fallen to his death from a rooftop. He went searching for Rosenfeld, and he walked straight off a rooftop and killed himself. So Lou needs Commissioner Gordon's help to go and find Rosenfeld and help him and figure out what's going on. So that's why Commissioner Gordon left Gotham City. And he knew Batman was going to be behind to help keep Gotham safe. So he left a letter with very, very vague... Like he didn't even say, like, what he was doing in the letter. He just said he was gone. So he leaves Gotham, and as he leaves Gotham, he walks past his doppelganger, but he doesn't see the doppelganger. The doppelganger is, like, hiding behind a wall, and he's like, And so we skip ahead. So that's, like, the little prologue. And we skip ahead to after Millennium 4, Batman has just left the Green Lantern Citadel, and remember how, like, in Millennium 4, Batman said that he was going to go to Louisiana and, like, search for, like, search for Mark Shaw? Well, it turns out he did that already. Like, he went to the swamp, looked for Mark Shaw, gave up, and decided, oh, go and look for him another time. Like, I'll try again. Like, so that happened off screen. What we saw at the end of Millennium 4 was that, like, he went to the swamp, and apparently he's already been there. He already looked for Mark Shaw, and he's come back, and he's like, I'm gonna go again later. So he's talking to Robin on his computer, and he's talking about the fact that, Commissioner Gordon was last seen, like, by tapping into the fake Commissioner Gordon's head, they were able to figure out that Commissioner Gordon is in Louisiana, so Batman's going to go to Louisiana to find Commissioner Gordon. And meanwhile, Commissioner Gordon meets up with Lou, where Lou explains the situation to him. He explains exactly what's happened, which I've already explained. He goes through how Garibaldi's dead and that Rosenfeld is in trouble. And while they're driving, Commissioner Gordon sees a car. He's like, thinking to himself, he's like, I could swear that car has been following us for a while now. Or at least I thought it was, until it speeded ahead of us and overtook us. And then they get to a motel, and Commissioner Gordon realizes that the same car that you saw before is there. So he goes to check into the hotel, and while he's there, a man who just goes by the name Mr. Morrison shows up. And it's Bruce. It's Bruce Wayne in disguise, or it's Batman in disguise, because Commissioner Gordon doesn't know that Batman is Bruce Wayne. But, like, it's Batman in disguise. He walks up to Commissioner Gordon and he's like, hey, Commish, like, I've just come to let you know that, like, I found your letter, and I'm gonna help you any way you know, like, any way you need. Like, I know that you're kind of doing your own thing right now, but if you need any help, just call on me and I'll come and help you. And Commissioner Gordon, like, figures out that it's Batman that's talking to him. He's got, like, Bruce has got, like, a red wig on and glasses and stuff. Also, Batman tells Commissioner Gordon that, like, while he was away, a Manhunter pretended to be him. And Commissioner Gordon's just like, oh shit, really? Wow. Well, good thing you took care of him. Man, that's awful. And so Bruce leaves to allow Commissioner Gordon to continue his own mission, which he does. He goes and he finds Rosenfeld's house. And Rosenfeld is like really like hysterical at the moment. He's kind of like, come in, hurry, they're after us. Oh no, they're here. And then like a laser beam shoots past Commissioner Gordon, and like he's like, Rosenfeld's like, duck, and like knocks him over. And it's a Manhunter who has showed up to kill them. And as the Manhunter is about to try and kill them with a laser gun, Batman comes out of nowhere and is like, and like punches the Manhunter. And then he's just like, I learned from my last fight with Commissioner Gordon that punching them doesn't do anything, so lasers might. And like he pulls out a laser and decides to shoot the Manhunter, and he manages to shoot the Manhunter's hand off. But the Manhunter's like, that's not going to do anything to me. Like, that's not going to stop me. And so he just starts shooting a laser out of like the stump of his hand, and he hits Rosenfeld with the laser. Commissioner Gordon's like, Rosenfeld! And then, like, Batman is just like, and, like, shoots a laser at the Manhunter and shoots his head off. And the Manhunter's like, doesn't matter if you kill me now, like, I got my target. Like, I win. Ha ha ha. And, like, he deactivates because he's dead. Bruce is like, I'll grab that head. You know, because the previous Manhunter head, I scanned the data from it to figure out stuff, so I can do that with this head too. And Rosenfeld is not in good shape. And so Batman leaves Commissioner Gordon to look after Rosenfeld and just hope that he survives. And he sets off and to get more information on the Manhunters, to figure out where their base is and stop them. And so he tracks a Manhunter which shortens out all by itself, which kind of confuses Batman. And meanwhile, somebody is actually following Batman, and it's Jim Corrigan. And so he and Batman meet in an alleyway. And they're like, hey, we're looking for the same thing, so let's team up. And then Jim Corrigan's friend, Kim, shows up and says that there's a guy at a restaurant that's been, like, ranting a bunch of stuff, a bunch of scary stuff. He's been talking about, like, robots and, like, a temple and, like, monsters in the swamps. And so Batman is like, alright, Jim, let's go to the swamps, find this temple. I think I know what they're talking about. Like, it must be the Manhunter's base. So they head off to the swamps to find a temple. And they find it. Like, we cut to them. They're in the swamp. They find the temple. All of the Manhunters have been knocked out by something. We don't know what it is, but they've all been deactivated, which is confusing to Batman and Jim, because they're like, what's going on? Like, why are the Manhunters all deactivated now? That's weird. They go inside the base, and they decide to split to search the base and, you know, cover more of it and see if they can find any captives, any Manhunters that might still be alive as well. And eventually Jim does find a jail cell full of innocent people, and they're being guarded by a couple of Manhunters who haven't been deactivated yet, so they obviously attack Jim. And meanwhile, Batman comes across a character known as Corinne. And Corinne is a member of the Suicide Squad. She's an old friend of Colonel Flagg, an old love of him. And she's currently in the Suicide Squad's, like, little buggy. And she's got the bomb on her that's going to blow up the temple. And Batman's just like, alright then, put the bomb here and let's go. And she says, like, no, I'm committing suicide, Batman, because I was controlled by the Manhunters. Like, I was a Manhunter. I'm not anymore, but I was a Manhunter, and I deserve this. You know, this is my revenge on them. and also I deserve to die. And Batman's just like, alright, I guess she's not gonna change her mind. And Jim shows up, and Batman and Jim decide to go and save the people from the jail cell and leave Corinne to do her thing, because Batman's just like, she's stubborn, she's not gonna change her mind. Let's go and save these people, Jim, while we can. Get them out of this temple, because it's gonna blow in 10 minutes. So they head off to the jail cell, they grab the guys, and as they're trying to, they grab the people... Sorry. That voice wrecks my throat. They grab the prisoners, and as they're trying to escape from the temple, a ton of Manhunters show up, but then the Manhunters get shorted out. They mysteriously just get deactivated like all the other Manhunters. And Jim's just like, oh wow, that's cool. That helped us a lot. And as they escape from the temple, they're like, Batman is like, hey, Jim, you use the hovercraft to get these people back to land and then come back and get me. And Jim's like, he's making orders, but he knows that we don't have enough time to actually escape because the bomb is about to explode, and then the bomb explodes just as before he finishes his sentence. It's kind of cool because there's a shot of Batman and he's clearly trying to protect everyone with his cape and take the full brunt of the blast. But it doesn't matter because as we know in Captain Atom, Firestorm turns the explosion into snow, and so that's just happened. So the explosion has been turned into snow. Batman's just like, snowing in autumn? Must be our lucky day. And Rosenfeld dies by Commissioner Gordon's side. But before he dies, he talks about how the White House has been infiltrated by a Manhunter. And so those are his last words. He's like, the White House, Ronald Reagan, infiltration. And then he passes away. Commissioner Gordon's really sad. He's like, what was he talking about? The White House is infiltrated by a Manhunter. We gotta warn the president. Meanwhile, Ronald Reagan is on the phone, and he's like, were we okay? I don't know what Ronald Reagan sounds like. Were we okay? Nancy is, Nancy won't mind if there's anything upward going on in Belle Reve. We both want to be kept informed of it. And, Nancy is a Manhunter. And that's the end of the issue. To be continued. Probably in Millennium 5. And, so the next tie-in that we're going to be covering now is the Suicide Squad tie-in. I actually need to grab a drink real quick. I need to get a drink of water. My throat is... I haven't drunk any water in a hot sec. So I'm just going to grab a quick drink. Stay hydrated. I think that's partly the reason why I wasn't able to do why the Batman voice was really hurting my throat, was because my throat was dry from not drinking any water. So the next time that we're doing is Suicide Squad, written by John Ostrander, with art by Luke McDonnell. So, the Suicide Squad, this one's actually, I think, a pretty well-known issue because of one particular thing that happens in this issue, and you'll know what I mean when we get to it. The Suicide Squad are at the Temple of the Manhunters, they're there. We're just starting off straight there, they're at the temple. The members are Captain Boomerang, Deadshot, Colonel Flag, Bronze Tiger, Corinne, Mark Shaw, and who used to be the Manhunter, and Slipknot. Slipknot and Captain Boomerang have exploding bracelets on, if you remember, because they're the two members that can't be trusted. Because back then, it wasn't a case of, like, everyone wears an explosive. No, it's the people that they don't trust have to wear an explosive bomb. Which I like that more. It makes more sense, you know? Why would they put a bomb in someone that they can trust? Like Deadshot. So they're at the temple, and they're talking about how, like, they gotta go into the temple, they gotta drop off the bomb, and get out. And while they're talking, like, while Colonel Flag is talking about, like, their plan, first of all, he, like, talks about the fact that, like, he constantly talks about the fact that he just doesn't trust Mark Shaw because Mark Shaw used to be the Manhunter. Like, he just talks about that. He's just like, Mark Shaw, you suck. I hate you, Mark Shaw. Like, you were a manhunter. I don't trust you. Now let's do our mission. And Slipknot and Captain Boomerang are having a little conversation to themselves, in which Captain Boomerang says, like, Slipknot, I don't believe that the bracelets that we have on our arms are actually explosive. Like, I believe that they won't actually explode if we run away. Like, at least that's my theory. That's my theory. Slipknot. And Slipknot's just like, oh, okay. Like, well, I'll believe what you say, Captain Boomerang. Like, that's good to know. It's good to know that we're not in danger of actually dying. Like Captain Boomerang, you would think Captain Boomerang is tricking him. Like, in the movie, because obviously we know that the 2016 Suicide Squad movie harkens back to this moment and does a reference to it, where we have Captain Boomerang and Slipknot, and Captain Boomerang tricks Slipknot into thinking that the explosive isn't an actual explosive. And in that, it's pretty obvious that Captain Boomerang knows that it really is an explosive and that he's tricking Slipknot into, like, dying. But in this, it's genuinely like Captain Boomerang doesn't know it's actually an explosive, because they've never actually had a moment where an explosive has been set off yet, so nobody knows if they're real or not. You know? Like, they've been wearing them, but no one's ever died from one yet, so they don't even know if they're real. So this is genuine curiosity from Captain Boomerang. But Slipknot believes him and agrees. So they head off to search for, but they're gonna head off to search, they're gonna head off into the temple, but then Captain Atom shows up, and that's when the timeline of this really does not sync well at all. Like, reading this, I was like, what? Did the writers not even talk to one another while they were writing these tie-ins? I don't think so, because we know that in Captain Atom, Suicide Squad and Captain Atom did not cross paths. We know for a fact that they did not. Captain Atom did not meet the Suicide Squad right before he fought Firestorm, because you would think, like, oh, maybe this is before he fights Firestorm, so, like, he meets with the Suicide Squad and then he finds Firestorm, and it's like, no, like it is before that, but it still doesn't sync up with the rest of, like, with the Captain Atom issue, and you'll see why. So Captain Atom shows up, and Suicide Squad, they tell him what they're doing. You know, who cares? It doesn't even sync up. Like, we're already breaking continuity right now. Captain Atom, like, this is how Captain Atom knows about the bomb. Which I guess it does explain why he knows about the bomb in the Captain Atom issue. But also, I think, like, whatever. This is how he knows about the bomb, but it still doesn't make sense as to, like, what happens later. So the Suicide Squad tell him about the bomb. Captain Atom's just like, alright, I'll go with you in order to help you set the bomb in the temple. And so he heads off with the Suicide Squad. So he's, like, flying alongside them. And then all of a sudden the wall of fire appears before them, and it's Firestorm. Firestorm shows up. Remember in Captain Atom when, like, Captain Atom and, like, comes across Firestorm and the Suicide Squad were right there? and then they just decided to leave because they wanted to let Captain Atom fight Firestorm. Remember when that didn't happen? Well, it happened in this. It didn't happen in the Captain Atom issue. There were no Suicide Squad. Captain Atom was just flying through the bayous, and then he came across Firestorm. But apparently, according to Suicide Squad, he must be hysterical because, like, he was with the Suicide Squad, apparently, when he came across Firestorm. Like, this is what I'm talking about when I'm like, they did not talk to one another when they wrote these. Because I'm pretty sure I would have remembered seeing the Suicide Squad in the Captain Atom issue if they were there, but they were not there. But whatever. That happened. So the Captain Atom issue is happening right now. Meanwhile, Amanda Waller and John Economos, that's his name. I almost said John Ostrander, that's the writer. John Economos are having a conversation about like what's been going on, about the current status of the situation. Economos tells Waller about how Batman came to visit him, and that he was able to keep Batman busy a bit and like keep him occupied by telling him, like he didn't tell him he didn't tell him the whole plan. Like he just told him that like Mark Shaw was in the swamps, and that Batman went searching for him. But like he was like, I didn't tell him about the bomb. Like he doesn't know about the bomb, so don't be mad at me. So, meanwhile, the Suicide Squad, like with the Suicide Squad, Captain Boomerang throws like his explosive boomerang to blow up a massive hole in the temple, and upon blowing it up, the Manhunters all come out and attack the Suicide Squad, so they start fighting the Manhunters. But most of them are melee-based, so they can't really do much to them. Like, Bronze Tiger can't really beat the Manhunters because he's just a melee dude, and they're robots. Slipknot is struggling against them as well, and so he's just kind of like, screw this, and decides to just run away. He's just like, ah, and like runs away from them. He's like, I'm out of here. And Captain Boomerang runs out of boomerangs. He's like fighting boomerangs, and then he runs out of them. And Deadshot's regular bullets aren't doing anything to the Manhunters, but he switches them out for explosive ones, and they work anyway. He's just like, switch to some armor piercing and high explosives, see what happens, and it works. They all blow up. Not all of them, but one of them does. But then he gets covered in like the shrapnel. He's just like, shrapnel, no. Bronze Tiger ends up just getting his leg broken because a Manhunter just cross-chops his leg. And so Bronze Tiger's out of commission now. Just gets beaten in one hit. Just like, because he's just a regular guy. Like, Bronze Tiger is just a regular dude. He's got no powers. So he just gets his leg broken by this robot hitting his leg, which just would make sense. If a metal arm hit you in the leg, your leg would be shattered. So I do like I appreciate the realism here. Meanwhile, Colonel Flag and Corinne are like charging through Manhunters in their little hovercraft. Also, like, Colonel Flag sees Ben get his leg broken, and so he's just like, Ben! Because they're friends, you know? Like, Ben's supposed to be, like, Ben's not only his, bodyguard, but is also, like, one of his closest friends. So he's really upset to see Ben get, you know, his leg broken. So, he stops the hovercraft so that they can pick up Ben and put him inside the hovercraft. But then Corinne gets grabbed and kidnapped by a Manhunter. Colonel Flag's just like, Corinne, hang on, I'll get you. And Mark Shaw's like, no, that's just what the Manhunters want. They prey on human frailty. Remember the mission, get going. And Colonel Flag's just like, alright, damn! And so he continues on with the mission. And meanwhile, Slipknot is running through the swamps. And somebody's watching him as he runs. And Slipknot's just like, the bracelet's, like, beeping. Good thing it's not actually an explosive. And, like, his arm just, like, gets blown up. He's just like, man, good thing this bracelet isn't going to explode. His arm just gets blown up. He screams. He's just like, ah! And then and then Captain Boomerang just hears that, ah! In the forest, and he's just like, well, I guess it did explode, and that's good for me to know. I wasn't even sure, but now that I know it explodes, I guess I'm going to follow my orders, because I don't want my arm blown up. And so Colonel Flag is like, we're gonna go find Corinne, because she's been kidnapped. We're also gonna take the bomb, Corinne has the bomb with her, I'm pretty sure, at the moment. So she's been kidnapped, so they're like, we gotta find Corinne so that we can find the bomb. You guys do whatever you want. Deadshot, the Captain Boomerang, just stay here and kill Manhunters. We're gonna go do our thing. And meanwhile, Slipknot's still alive, because unlike in the movie, he does survive the explosion because it's only on his arm in this. So he's lost his arm, but he's still alive. He's just like, oh, somebody please help me. And a woman approaches him. He's like, I don't want to die here. And she's like, where do you want to die? So he gets saved by this mysterious woman. And we won't see the resolution to this plot thread unless we were reading Suicide Squad, because it happens in the next issue of Suicide Squad, I'm pretty sure. Which, we're obviously not going to see, because we're not covering that. Captain Boomerang, runs out of boomerangs, and he asks for Deadshot, if he can join Deadshot, because Deadshot has his guns, and Deadshot's like, yeah, sure, but it's probably not a great idea, because I just run out of bullets. Captain Boomerang's just like, what? And so, Mark just jumps into the, hovercraft, and he's like, floor it, Colonel, we gotta get moving. The Manhunters are crowding in. And so they floor it with their little buggy. It's not even a hovercraft. Or it is a hovercraft, but it can have wheels too. So they drive away in their little hover buggy. And enter the temple. And upon entering the temple, they come across Corinne, who is hanging off of a big, off of a wall. Hanging to her death, and she's like, help me, and Colonel Flag is obviously like, Corinne, I'll help you because I love you. And Mark is just like, no, don't, it's obviously a trick by the Manhunters. And Corinne's just like, I broke free, I was trying to make my way back, but I slipped. Rick, help me. Mark's like, don't. The Manhunters, rely on human weakness to trick you. And Colonel Flag's like, sorry, but I love her, so I'm gonna save her. And he punches Mark in the face. And then he drives under where Corinne is and tells Corinne to drop off of the wall. And Corinne drops off of the wall, and he grabs her as she falls and catches her. And as he catches her, he's like, easy, I got you. And then she's like, fool, I was a Manhunter the entire time. Mark was right. You shouldn't have punched him in the face. And she pulls out a gun, and she's got him. She's like, how could you? How long have you been part of the Manhunters? Remember that time, the debacle in Cambodia, which happened in Secret Origins 14? Well, Brighton Evans died and I became ill. You never visited me in the hospital or afterwards. Orders, you said. Duty. After I was released, I still felt lost, confused, empty. That's when I met Mark Shaw. And she talks about the fact that she fell in love with Mark Shaw, and Mark introduced her to the Manhunters, and that was when she became a Manhunter. And then she said, for the Manhunters, I infiltrated the squad when it reformed, and I made no attempt to contact you when you joined. Mark, as you instructed. Basically, she, said, she didn't contact Mark at all. because she didn't want to make it seem like her and Mark had a history, because it was important that that didn't get that they didn't have, like, she didn't want them to know that Mark and her had a history because it would ruin the plan. And Mark is like, I don't know what you're talking about, Corinne, but you must be lying because I was in prison during that time. So there's no way you would have met and fell in love with me. And that's when a Manhunter shows up and claims to be the real Mark Shaw. He's got, like, the Mark Shaw Manhunter costume on. It's like, I'm the real Mark Shaw. That Mark Shaw is an android that the Manhunters created that to think it was me, and so that it could spend time in prison in my place. And so the privateer, like, who is the Mark Shaw that is being accused of being the fake Mark Shaw, is like, no, I'm not the android. You're the android. I'm the real Mark Shaw. And Colonel Flagg gets attacked by the Mark Shaw that claims to be the real Mark Shaw, like the one that looks like a Manhunter. And he gets attacked by the Manhunter. I'll just call him the Manhunter because the Mark Shaw that just showed up that's claiming to be the real one, he isn't the real one. I'm just going to say it now. He's not the real Mark Shaw. The Mark Shaw that we've been with this whole time is the real one. So the Manhunter shoots Rick Flag and then shoots Mark Shaw, and then he gives Corinne the laser and tells her to kill Colonel Flagg, and she's like, I will do it for you, darling. And then she can't come to terms with it, and she can't kill Colonel Flagg because she's still, like, part of her still loves him. And that's when the Manhunter fritzes out and falls apart. And that's when Corinne realizes that the Mark Shaw that she was listening to really wasn't the real Mark Shaw, the one that she thought was the real one. And all of the Manhunters start shorting out like they did in the Detective Comics issue. And Corinne and the real Mark Shaw have a bit of a moment. And that's when Corinne says the fact that she, like, wants to be the one that sets off the bomb, and she wants to do it herself. She wants to sacrifice herself. And Colonel Flagg has been knocked out, so he can't stop her from doing it. So it's just Mark Shaw. Mark Shaw's the only one there that can stop her from doing it, and Mark Shaw allows her to do it because he knows that this is what she wants to do. She wants to sacrifice herself. So he's like, okay, I know what you want, so I'm going to let you do that. She's like, thank you. And Corinne goes off. She has her little meeting with the Dark Knight off screen, like with Batman off screen. And so she's, like, driving the hover buggy through the temple, smashing into Manhunters until she flips the car and gets pinned underneath it. And the Suicide Squad managed to escape from the temple with Colonel Flagg. And they get far enough away from the temple so that they would be out of the blast radius. Or not out of the blast radius, but like they know that they're probably going to die in the explosion. And they're kind of expecting that. But also, I think they're waiting for... Because Captain Adam said that he's going to try and stop the explosion from killing them. So they're hoping that he succeeds in doing that. But Corinne gets ready to die in the explosion. She's just lying there, ready to die. And Colonel Flagg wakes up, and he's like, where's Corinne? And Captain Boomerang's like, taking the bomb in. And Flagg is like, Corinne! And then, like, the temple explodes. And then it turns into snow. Just like we've said multiple times before. And we kind of get this moment of, like, Colonel Flagg just doesn't say anything. He just looks disappointed. And, Captain Boomerang, I think it's Captain Boomerang, is like, snow, huh? So, I guess we won, eh? And that's it. That's the end of the tie-in. Yeah. It was pretty good. Like, for a tie-in, I would say it's pretty good. I would feel like this is... I can only imagine that this is probably one of the weaker Suicide Squad issues, just because it is a tie-in to an event, and it's always really hard to tell a really good story when you're having to tie it in, especially when you're writing the Suicide Squad, and the Suicide Squad were made to be major players during the event, so you're kind of forced to... John was kind of forced to include them, like tie them in heavily into the event. He wasn't really allowed to do his own thing, but at least he was able to tell a somewhat compelling story for like Corinne and Mark Shaw and Colonel Flagg, you know, like the love triangle between them and the sacrifice that Corinne made, and obviously it has that very memorable moment of Slipknot's arm being blown up. Which, it's crazy to think that happened in a tie-in. Like, I wonder how many people even know that it happened in a tie-in for Millennium, of all things. But yeah, that's the end of that tie-in. And the next tie-in that we're going to be covering is the Spectre, because it turns out that the Spectre did have a series going on at this time. I thought he didn't, because he was in the Action Comics storyline. But it turns out that was just because it was a guest starring Spectre story. Like, it was a Superman story guest starring Spectre. So that makes sense. But yeah, so the next time we're going to be covering is Spectre. So let's get straight into that and see what our Angel of Vengeance is up to right now. Right, so the Spectre tie-in, written by Doug Mensch and with art by Gray Morrow. This is probably my favorite tie-in so far, not just because it ties heavily into the Millennium event, but also it's just really weird, but in a good way, and I really like it, and I can see why people really love this Spectre run, like the run in the 80s. People really like that run. And I can see why, because it's pretty good. So, without further ado, let's get straight into it. We start off during, like, I think it was Millennium 4, where the Spectre and Jim Corrigan go to a Madame Xanadu's, like, little session, like, little tarot card session, and Spectre figures out that, like, he needs to go to New Orleans, and so he enters the body of Jim Corrigan. And they head to New Orleans, and the closest town to them is Belle Reve. So Jim and Kim, who are driving through Louisiana, decide to head to Belle Reve to see if they can figure out where this Manhunter temple is. And as they're about to head into like a diner to have something to eat, the Spectre comes out of Jim, and is like, I sense that what we're dealing with is supernatural, and I'm the one that deals with the supernatural stuff, so I'm gonna go off and do my own thing, and you and Kim can just do whatever you want. And Jim's just like, we can handle it. Like, we can help you. And Spectre's like, no! It's mine, and mine alone. And then he leaves. He's like, stay here. And Jim and Kim are like, oh, fuck him, I guess. And so they decide to just go and eat at the local diner while Spectre searches the swamps for the Manhunters. He searches the entirety of the swamps, and while Jim and Kim are at the diner, this guy barges in, and he's like, aliens! Weird creatures in the swamp! One of them's after me! Ah! And they're like, oh, that sounds suspicious. It's basically what Jim mentioned when he met Batman in that other issue. Like, this guy came in and was talking about monsters and stuff. Spectre eventually finds the Manhunters, and he sees that they're, like, communicating with something. And so he's like, alright, I guess I'm going to follow one of these Manhunters. And so he starts following it just to see where it's going and what it's doing. Jim decides to head off from the diner because that guy's weirding him out. He's like, this guy's been weird. I'm just going to go for a stroll and see if I find anything, you know, because there's nothing else I can do. Meanwhile, the Spectre continues tailing this Manhunter and eventually finds that the Manhunter was heading off to a tree where he's been keeping a bunch of hostages. And these are going to be the same people that we will see in the jail cell later on that Batman saved. Like, remember when that happened? It's these people in this tree. He's kind of monologuing what the Manhunter's doing. He's just like, wow, this Manhunter's really strong. He's ripping open the tree. He's grabbing, like, he's getting the hostages. And so, Spectre is like, I'm able to possess inanimate things. The only living thing I'm able to possess is Jim Corrigan because I am tied to him. But I can possess any inanimate things. And, but I sense that the Manhunter isn't entirely inanimate. There's something animate about it. But I can't figure out what it is. So I'm going to try and possess it because maybe I'll be able to force my way in. And he tries to possess the Manhunter. And he ends up, like, falling, like, he can't possess it, and he ends up falling through the Manhunter's, like, world inside his body, like this other dimension that's inside the Manhunter. It's like this dimension that Spectre goes to when he possesses people, but, like, usually he can grab a hold of it and then take possession, but at the moment, Spectre can't grab a hold of anything, and he's just plummeting through this endless abyss of, like, this endless dimension. And as he's falling through this other dimension, the Manhunter starts, like, freaking out. And so the hostages are like, oh, he's freaking out. Let's get out of here. Like, this is our opportunity. And eventually, Spectre lands in, like, this other world. He finds some footing, and he finds a giant key. And he's like, wow, I don't think this key is just a this key is probably a figurative message. It might be, like, the key to me getting out of here. Like, it's probably going to unlock the way so I can hopefully take control of this Manhunter. And so he grabs the key and he tries using it, but he ends up falling further. And it's because the Manhunter that he's in has been completely knocked out. So Spectre ends up falling further in until he reaches another key, and he discovers that he's actually possessed another Manhunter. Like, he's inside another Manhunter. So he's gone from that first Manhunter, fallen through the dimension into another Manhunter, and this is how he discovers that the Manhunters are all linked. They all have the same hive mind. And so he uses the key, and the Manhunter that he's in is currently in an alleyway, and so when he uses the key, it starts fritzing out, and eventually falls over, and that's the Manhunter that Jim Corrigan and Batman find in the alleyway in the Detective Comics issue. Remember that? That's how that happened. That's why that Manhunter was fritzing out, and why it ended up falling over. So, Jim Corrigan and Batman meet, like they did in that issue, and Spectre continues to fall through dimensions, and he goes from one Manhunter to the next, and is, like, shutting them down one by one as he travels through them. And he ends up shutting down, like, a lot of them. And he decides that, like, it's possible that, like, he could end up getting to, like, the final Manhunter and shutting that one down, but he decides that it's very possible that if he does get to the last Manhunter and shut it down by using the key, that he's just going to end up back at the first Manhunter again, and it's just going to be a never-ending loop. So he decides that instead of using the key, he'll possess the key and become the key. So he possesses the key, and upon possessing the key, he ends up in another dimension where and he finds himself inside, like, and upon traversing this dimension, he finds himself inside this giant, like, machine-like room, and he decides that he must be in, like, the, like, it's like the place that controls all Manhunters. It's like where the, like, radio signal that, like, they're all connected to is, that controls all of them. So he decides that, like, because it's inanimate, he can possess this, like, beacon signal that the Manhunters are all connected to, and upon possessing it, he can destroy it, and if he destroys it, he might be able to destroy all the Manhunters. But he also says that if he destroys it, he's like, if I destroy it, I'm probably going to destroy myself too, and if I destroy myself, Jim is going to die too. So I'm sorry, Jim, that you had to lose your life thanks to my valiant sacrifice, but I'm willing to do it for the greater good. So he possesses the machine, he works on destroying it, because he knows that, like, the bomb is going to blow up and it will blow him up with it, because he's inside, like, all the Manhunters. But yeah, he does it, and like, he cuts the feed to all the Manhunters, which shortens them all out. The explosion happens, and all of the Manhunters are destroyed, and but the Spectre isn't destroyed. He survives. And the only reason he survives is because Firestorm, as we know, turned the bomb into snow. So the explosion didn't destroy the Manhunters' bodies. Instead, they all got shorted out, but their bodies didn't get destroyed, and so Spectre was spared, and he was able to survive. So he travels through another dimension, he comes out of the Manhunter's body, and realizes what's happened. He's like, oh, it's snowing. Well, that means that things must be okay now. And that's the end of the tie-in. Like, that's how it ends. Yeah, he even says, like, something must have happened, like, something awesome. Through the heat and the silence of the stilled swamp, it began to snow. And yeah, that's where we end with the Spectre tie-in. I really like it because there's a lot of dialogue of a lot of Spectre just, like, doing it's a lot of, like, very, like, quizzical dialogue, like a lot of whimsical poetry and stuff, long drawn out, like, explanations of what's going on, which is great to read, but, like, not important. It's not important for me to say everything that the Spectre is thinking to himself, you know. But it's really good tie-in. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed, like, seeing Spectre just, like, traverse through all the minds of the Manhunters. And we finally discovered why they were shorted out. It's pretty obvious it was the Spectre who was responsible, but it was cool to see it play out. And so that's the end of the Spectre tie-in. I'm going to take a quick drink of water, and then we'll get on straight to the next book. And the next book is Millennium issue 5. Now, a lot doesn't happen in Millennium issue 5, so I don't think it's going to take me very long to explain exactly what happens, because not a lot happens. But with Millennium issue 5, Harupa and Nadia are explaining to the New Guardians how the universe is created. And they spend the entire issue talking to the New Guardians about how the universe was created. And they basically just, like, somehow they make it super overly complicated about how to talk about life and death and immortality. And how, like, the universe begins with life and ends with death. That's basically literally all they are explaining to the New Guardians, but just in a very long, drawn-out way that just is really confusing to read and also just not enjoyable to read because it's just way too on the nose. But that's what they do the entire issue. The stuff that we're mostly going to be talking about is what is happening in between that, because throughout the whole issue they're kind of like giving this monologue alongside what the actual heroes and superheroes are doing, you know? So while they're explaining all of their shit and how the universe was created and stuff to the New Guardians, Superman shows up to the Green Lantern Citadel. He talks about what's happened. A lot of this issue is basically a lot of the characters are just talking about what's happened in their own tie-ins, so I'm going to skip over that. Like, whenever a character mentions what happened in their tie-in, I'm just going to skip over it because that's a lot of the dialogue in this. So Superman shows up, he talks about what's happened to him in his tie-ins, and then he heads into the Green Lantern Citadel, where he finds that everyone's cheering for Batman. They're all like, way to go, Batman, yeah! And it's a great panel. It's a full-page panel of Superman's... From Superman's point of view, you can see Batman, he's just standing there, giving a little smirk, and everyone in the background is just like, woo! It's pretty great. And Superman's like, hey, what's going on? Why is everyone cheering? And Batman's like, well, I found the base that the Manhunters were all at, and I helped destroy it, so almost all of the Manhunters are on Earth are dead thanks to me, and some other people, but mostly me. And he even thinks to himself, and I really love it, he's like, I only had a hand in it. And then to himself, he's like, but I can't deny that I'm glad that you had none. Because this version of Batman and Superman aren't friends, I don't think. Not yet, anyway. They haven't developed their friendship. So there's a bit of a rivalry between them, but I just love Batman just being like, man, I'm so glad that Superman had nothing to do with the Manhunter's destruction. And so he recollects what happened in his tie-in, and so does everyone else. Captain Atom talks about what happened in his tie-in. The Outsiders and like the Green Lantern Corps all talk about what happened in their tie-ins. And then they all decide that they're going to just have a big party and get to know each other and just eat some food and stuff. They're just going to have a big superhero party. And Wally West is just, like, talking about how, like, depressed he is about his dad. He's like, man, my dad sucks. He's a manhunter. But at least, like, he didn't actually kill my mom. So, you know, silver linings. Meanwhile, Ronald Reagan is told that the Manhunters have been dealt a serious blow. And he's like, oh yes, I'm very pleased that they have finally failed. And the reporter is like, but isn't that precisely the opposite of your previous position? And Ronald Reagan's just like, no, some of you misinterpreted my position. Like, he literally gaslights them. He's just like, no, you just misheard what I said. I was never on their side. You misheard me. And, he even mentions to himself, he's just like, Mother, like, I know you told me that the Manhunters fellows are gone, but still. So, like, his mum is lying to him. Like, his mum, who is a Manhunter, which was revealed in the previous issue, has told him that all the Manhunters are gone, but they haven't. We know that they haven't. The New Guardians continue their lesson on, like, the universe and what makes up the universe, and, like, what the nature of nature is and shit like that. And there's a funny moment that I'm going to mention because I just find it funny how, like, they're all talking about how, like, what the nature of nature is. And, you know, they're talking about, like, the nature of nature is love, or the nature of nature is demands creation, and Floronic Man is like, the nature of nature is green. And I just thought that was funny. He's just like in a little panel at the bottom, just like, the nature of nature is green. I love the green. And then the racist guy is just kind of like watching all this happening. He's just like, he doesn't say anything. But yeah, everyone has their like little party, and then Luca, who is a character, she's a member of the Outsiders, starts to like, her head starts hurting, and she's like, her hometown of her home of Abyssia, have just sent her a telepathic message saying that they're in trouble. So the Outsiders decide that they need to go and help Abyssia. So that's probably what they're going to do in their tie-in that we will read later. They do talk about, like, possibly getting Batman's help, but Black Lightning is like, he's got better things to do than help us. Like, we don't need Batman anymore. Like, we're fine on our own, And so the Outsiders head off, and there's this funny moment where Mr. Miracle is talking to Batman, and Mr. Miracle has the ability to escape from anything. And so when his conversation with Batman is, he's talking about like his favorite escapists. He's just like, sure, Houdini was great, but for sheer extravagance, the Dun Ninja was the master. I mean, he has this harness that and Batman's just like, excuse me, I'll be right back. And Mr. Miracle goes out and he's like, what's the matter, Batman? And Batman's just like, it's hard to say, but I put the Outsiders together, but just now I suddenly felt... And he's like, what? And Batman's just like, no, if I start jumping at shadows, I'll lose my edge. My world goes a little crazy sometimes, but I don't. It's just like, I love how Steve Englehart, like, he writes Batman to be so edgy, and I kind of love it. And there's a couple of like moments between characters as they are like conversing. Like Blue Beetle's laughing at the fact that Green Arrow is hitting on Katma Tui, or Katma Stewart as she's known at this point in time, which is funny because obviously she's a married woman, and so he's like laughing his head off. And Aricia is having a conversation with Wonder Woman, and then Wonder Woman just disappears. Like, because Wonder Woman is interested in talking to the Zambrons because she wonders if they have any relation to the Amazons. And then she just disappears, and Aricia is like, whoa, where'd she go? Like, that was weird. And then Aquaman and Aqualad show up after their tie-in. They show up, and they're just like, hey guys, sorry we didn't communicate with you earlier. But we were busy dealing with something really weird that we found in the ocean, and we want to show you guys what it is. So they grab all the heroes to come out with them, and they show them the massive ship that they found at the bottom of the ocean, because apparently Aquaman and Aqualad carried it all the way to the shore, like to the Green Lantern Citadel. They like crossed the entire ocean with it and carried it. Like, I knew Aquaman had like super strength, but like it's a pretty damn big ship. So at this point in time, it's assumed that Aquaman's super strength is like on the same level as like, or not that far from Superman's, like, especially because this Superman is a lot weaker than the Silver Age Superman. He can't pull planets and shit like that. But like, this is a big ass ship, so I would assume that Aquaman has around about the same level of super strength that Superman has. But they explain how they found the ship, and then Superman talks about how like the Manhunters come from like there's a world that they come from, but the world is hidden. You can't see it, so they got to figure out how to find this world, because they've been thinking about protecting Earth, but what they don't realize is that the Manhunters aren't just on Earth; they're on other planets too. Possibly. So they need to hit them where it hurts, which is their planet. But they're kind of like, how are we even going to find the planet? The Guardians are busy at the moment. We can't communicate to them. They're busy doing their little lecture. Like, how are we going to find this other world? And Green Lantern's like, well, I've been there before, and so have the JLA, so that will at least give us a little bit of a chance of possibly finding it. What we need to do is we need to just do what most crossovers do and create like a band of heroes who will go off and search for this world. That's the plan. They're like, let's just choose a bunch of us, whoever's popular at this point in time, and then send them off to this other world. Because originally Superman is just like, it's going to be me and the Green Lantern Corps, we'll go and do it, but then the Green Lanterns are like, well, we don't want all the Green Lanterns to go, like, some of us should stay behind and protect Earth. You know, we're really powerful, so we should keep some of us here. Meanwhile, Harbinger is stuck in her machine, and then a Green Lantern, whose name is Drick from Crick, shows up to help her. And Drick from Crick is a very peculiar Green Lantern because he used to be alive, but technically he's dead. He's a corpse that is possessed by his ring. So back when he was alive, he fought Sinestro and was killed by Sinestro, but the ring didn't let him die and instead has forced his body to keep going as a corpse and as a Green Lantern. It's pretty fucked up, but it's goofy at the same time. Like, he's basically like this rotting corpse of a Green Lantern. Closest thing we got to a Black Lantern before Blackest Night even happened. But he comes to help Harbinger, and Harbinger gets to discover his origin. And as they're about to escape, the Grandmaster shows up and is just like, no man escapes the Manhunters. Oh, also, before that happened, I think it's Steel, I think his name is, was like, or like Captain Steel or whatever his name is, was like, oh yeah, by the way, let's call Hawkwoman and Hawkman because they're not in the event, so let's call them. Like, that's literally what he does. He's just like, oh, let's call Hawkman and Hawkwoman because, like, or Hawkgirl, because they said that they would help us if we called them, so let's call them so that they're in the event. And so they show up. And they've put together a group that are going to go to this other world, and it consists of, like, to the Manhunters world, and it consists of Superman, Arisia, Katmatui, Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, Martian Manhunter, Captain Atom, and Firestorm. Oh, and Hawkman and Hawkgirl are going with them too. And they're just kind of like, how are we even going to get there? Like, how are we going to travel there? Like, we don't have a lot of time. And Dr. Fate shows up and he's like, I can solve that problem. I'll teleport you there. And he teleports them away. And after they've teleported away, Blue Beetle is like looking at the giant Aquaman, like Aquaman's, the ship that Aquaman found. And he's kind of like, there's something about this ship that seems kind of sinister, and I don't like it. I'm not a fan of sinister things, and I sense something sinister about that ship. And then the Guardian and Zamaron finish their lecture. Nadia and Harupa finish their lecture for the new Guardians. They said a whole bunch of nothing. They're just like, and that's how the universe was created. The end. And that's the end of Millennium issue 5. We get left off on that thrilling cliffhanger of Harupa and Nadia finishing their lecture. It was the whole bunch of bullshit. I enjoyed, like this is definitely the worst issue of Millennium so far, because most of it is just the characters being like, this is what happened in this tie-in, this is what happened in this tie-in, and then, like, the Harupa and Nadia are just like, and the universe is a universe, and it's full of life and death, and the universe is the beginning and the end of all, and the universe is, it starts and then it ends, and it comes around again, and it goes up and down and left and right, and, like, it just doesn't, it's just, like, a bunch of, like, just gobbledygook. of just Steve Englehart being like, how it's like when you write an essay and you just like, and it just goes on and on and on. Like, everyone had that point in time when they were like, 12 years old, they had to write an essay, and they would literally just keep going just to have more, like, as many words as possible, even if it didn't make sense. That's exactly what reading this felt like. But yeah, that's issue 6 of issue 5 of Millennium, and the next tie-in that we're going to be covering after that, hopefully it's better than that was, is Firestorm, the Nuclear Man, issue 68. And as you know, as you would probably guess, I'm not looking forward to reading this. I hope it's good, because the last Firestorm tie-in was complete shit. I hated it because it just had nothing to do with the event, or like almost nothing to do with the event, and it was just way too overly confusing for someone that wasn't reading Firestorm at the time. Like, it just was not a good entry point for Firestorm, which these tie-ins are supposed to be entry points for people. That's why you read the tie-ins. You're supposed to pull a reader in and be like, hey, look at this series. You like this? Why don't you keep reading? And Firestorm did not do that. But enough about that issue. We're past that. Let's get on to this Firestorm issue and see if it's any good. And it probably will be, because it's all about Firestorm teaming up with the other heroes, looking for the Manhunter's world, because he's a part of their group. So at least we got that. At least there's going to be other heroes in this story. Unless John Ostrander decides that he just wants to start becoming all philosophical and stuff all over again. But yeah, let's get straight into it. So the the Firestorm tie-in, definitely better than the first Firestorm tie-in. I think I'm just not a fan of Firestorm during this period. Not in general. I like Firestorm. I just don't like this Firestorm, because this was a period of time where, like, Firestorm didn't have any kind of human personality controlling him, and he was just controlling him himself. And that would be fine if he had a fucking personality. But no, he's just an emotionless being, and that's not fun to read. Like, I'm not reading, like, I don't want to read a Firestorm comic where Firestorm doesn't crack a joke or, have, like, be a fun, lively character. Instead, he's, like, just emotionless and boring. And I think that's why I'm not gelling with these comics. And I don't even know why John Ostrander even thought of doing that, taking away what made Firestorm likable in the first place. Because that's literally what he did. He was like, people really like the fact that Firestorm is like kind of a jokester and is a bit like DC's Spider-Man. Oh, well then I'm going to take that all away and just make him really boring and have no personality. Yay. That's my opinion on, like, this Firestorm. But this issue is better than the last one. I'd still say it's low on my tie-in issues, just because I just don't like how this version of Firestorm is characterized. But the other characters being there definitely help save the issue. We get some Drick in this, and you always want Drick from Crick. It always makes it more enjoyable. And Captain Atom also plays a role in this issue. He's kind of one that carries the role that Firestorm usually has, which is to be the wisecracking character. But yeah, it's written by John Ostrander and with art by Richard Howell, who is a guest penciler this time. So he's not usually he's not usually drawing the book, but he is this time. So we start off where the last Millennium issue left us off, where we've got, like, this new team that's been formed, consisting of, like, Martian Manhunter, Superman, Dr. Fate, Firestorm, Captain Atom, Hawkgirl, Hawkman, Aricia, Hal Jordan, and Kamatui. And I think that's everyone. And so they've all traveled to a Manhunter planet, because I think there's multiple now, and the goal is to destroy all of them. So they've come to a Martian Manhunter planet, or the Martian Manhunter planet. Not Martian Manhunter, just Manhunter. The fact that they're called the Manhunters, it's really easy to accidentally get them mixed up with Martian Manhunter. Mr. Miracle even made a joke about it, like, earlier, where, like, he realized that Martian Manhunter and the Manhunters had the same last name. And Manhunter had to be like, no, I'm not one of them. But yeah, they've come to the Manhunter planet, and Captain Atom realizes that, like, well, he already realized it before, but he's realizing it again. We have to gloss over it again. That Firestorm is acting weird, so he's asking Firestorm, he's like, what's going on with you? And Firestorm's like, not even talking to him, and in his own head, Firestorm is thinking, I sense danger on this planet, I gotta go help them. So he flies off to go help this person, and Captain Atom's like, what the fuck, man? Like, where you going? Superman's like, you gotta go get him, Captain Atom. Like, we can't just let him fly off and do whatever he wants. We come here for a reason. So Captain Atom's like, alright, I'll handle this. See you guys in a sec. And he heads off after Firestorm. Meanwhile, Harbinger somehow escaped the Grandmaster. I don't know, like, did John Ostrander forget that, like, when she tried to escape the base, the Grandmaster literally got in her way, and Drick? Somehow she eluded him. We don't see how, but she's, you know, on a different part of the planet now, still escaping. You would assume that, like, there was going to be a confrontation. There probably was supposed to be a confrontation. Like, that's what Steve Englehart clearly set up, where, like, there was going to be a confrontation between the Grandmaster and Harbinger, but John Ostrander just skipped right over that, and so she's already escaped the Grandmaster, and this giant wheel-like... she's in, like, this hell-like area where there's, like, magma and lava. She's, like, running on this, like, winding pathway, and this giant wheel-like construction, like, it's like a giant wheel mechanism. It's kind of like, if you think of, like, Big Wheel from, like, Marvel, that character, like, that really lame Spider-Man character, it's like him, but a smaller version comes, like, at her. And so she duplicates herself in order to try and destroy the wheel, and eventually ends up just destroying the pathway that it's, like, rolling on, which sends it falling into the lava. And then another one comes along, and she's like, ah, crap. But then it gets destroyed by Drick. Drick shows up. And if you remember, Drick is a dead Green Lantern who is being forced by his power ring to keep fighting. And so Drick's come, and she's like, Drick, thank heavens you showed up. And then Drick just gets blasted by Firestorm, because Drick is the reason Firestorm sensed Harbinger in trouble and thought Drick was trying to kill her. So he blasted him. And she's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why did you blast him? And Firestorm's like, he was a bad guy. Like, wasn't he trying to hurt you? And Captain Atom's like, Firestorm, like, going off of his appearance, that guy was a Green Lantern, and they're the good guys. You shouldn't just blast people just because they look a little bit weird. And that's when Harbinger explains to him that, like, he's like, yeah, he saved my life. Like, you know, you better get away from me, or I'll do something to you, you know? Like, how dare you blast my friend? And so, like, while Captain Atom and Harbinger are conversing, Firestorm, like, creates an extinguisher to put out Drick. Because Drick's still alive. Well, he's not alive, but he's still functioning. Firestorm and Drick actually have, like, start to get along with each other. Firestorm asks Drick what being dead is like, but Drick obviously can't talk because he's not even alive. Captain Atom's like, what are you doing? And Firestorm's like, I'm talking to Drick. Captain Atom's like, he's dead. Stop it. Like, stop talking to him. Like, he's a dead person. And Firestorm's like, so? That doesn't mean he's not a nice person. But obviously he's saying it. I'm adding some personality to Firestorm, but he probably did not say it like that. He probably said it more like, so? That doesn't mean he is not a nice person. And Captain Adam's just like, like slapping his forehead. Then all of a sudden, 4 more of those wheel things come to attack them. And so they all work together in order to destroy them. They all fight these, like, wheel-like mechanisms. But their powers are so strong, because these are, like, 4 really powerful characters in the DC universe, that they start, the planet starts, like, crumbling around them. And, like, rocks start falling down. And Firestorm gets knocked out. And he wakes up in, like, pitch blackness. And then like, gets woken up by somebody. And that's when he realizes that he's back in the Louisiana swamps, and Dr. Ferguson is there. If you remember, Dr. Ferguson is a Firestorm character who turned out to be a Manhunter, and he's the reason why Firestorm ended up under the control of the Manhunters. So basically, he decides to try to lie to Firestorm again, because this isn't actually happening. This is all like a fabrication created by the Manhunters to make Firestorm think that none of that stuff happened. So Ferguson's like, yeah, you never went to the Manhunter planet with the Justice League. You've been here this entire time. The temple is still here. It never blew up. And you've brought Captain Atom to us because Captain Atom has decided to join us. So good job. And Firestorm obviously does not believe him. He's like, I don't believe you. Like, this is all lies. And Ferguson's like, no, I'm not lying. Like, this is all real. And Captain Atom, like, the fake Captain Atom, tries to convince Firestorm to, like, help them kill all the humans. And Firestorm's like, I am Firestorm. And killing is not the answer. And then he's like, you are not the Captain Atom. The true Captain Atom told me to look past appearances. The true Captain Atom would not speak as you do. Therefore, you are a lie. Therefore, this is all is a lie. Because as we remember, and that's literally the way he says it. That's the dialogue. Because as we remember, Captain Atom was like, don't judge people based on their appearances. And here, this Captain Atom is telling Firestorm to kill humans because they look different. And it's upon this realization that the fabrication is destroyed, and Firestorm realizes that he's still on the Manhunter planet, and that he's surrounded by Manhunters, and so he starts fighting them, obviously. Starts fighting all the Manhunters, and Dr. Ferguson tries one more time to bring him over to their side, because he's like, the planet is being destroyed, like, this is your last chance to join us, and if you join us, I'll tell you how, like, I'll reveal all the mysteries to you, Like, he's like, I'm sure you realize that, like, you are 2 other beings fused together, right? Like, I'll tell you exactly what happened. And Firestorm's like, I don't need you to tell me. I can figure it out myself. Fuck you. And so he destroys the Ferguson Manhunter. And then after that, he speaks to Ronnie Raymond and the other guy that is inside his body, whose name I can't remember, but it's not Martin Stein. I can't remember his name though, because they don't mention his name in this, and he's not a memorable Firestorm character. I'm pretty sure he only appears in this run, and then after that, like, he probably only ever comes back as, like, whenever an artist is like, hey, I remember that guy, let's bring him back for an issue or something like that. But he talks to he talks to them. They're currently inside Firestorm still, bound and unable to speak or take control. Firestorm's like, do you agree to help me? And in return, I will, after we've done this, I will give you full control of Firestorm again, and I will lay dormant myself. And they agree. I'm going to assume one of them agrees. I'm going to assume it's Ronnie, because he's the popular one. But he agrees, and Firestorm breaks their bounding so that they can all finally start working together again, all three personalities. And after he does this, that's when Captain Atom, Harbinger, and Drickle show up, and they're like, "Hey, we found you. We've been searching you for this entire time. Like, what happened?" And Firestorm's like, "Doesn't matter. Like, planet's about to explode. Let's get out of here." And so they escape through the roof just as the planet starts exploding, the Manhunter planet, and they land on the little rock that Superman and Martian Manhunter and Dr. Fate and stuff were sitting on. And it's assumed that, like, they didn't even do anything. That, like, Superman and Green Lantern and Hawkman and Hawkgirl and all that were, like, not on the planet, that weren't with Captain Atom and Harbinger and all that, it's assumed they didn't do anything, which is kind of weird. They, like, went to the planet and didn't end up doing anything. Yeah, and then that's it. Like, that's what happens. And I would say what these characters are going to do next, but I don't know what they're going to do next. And John Ostrander doesn't know what they're going to do next either, so he kind of just leaves it hanging for whoever is going to continue that for, I'm guessing, Steve Englehart to keep doing it, or like the next Superman issue or something, if there is one. We'll tie into this and continue this storyline and just be like, and this is what they're doing next. But yeah, that's the Firestorm tie-in, and this is the end of this episode of the podcast. We're ending it here because I'm reading these as volumes that like fan-made archival volumes of this event. You can find them online at like Read Comics. It's the easiest way to be able to read all of Millennium without having to collect everything singly, because not only is the trade paperback of Millennium almost impossible to find now, but it doesn't include any of the tie-ins, which you kind of need if you want to understand the whole story. So yeah, definitely go to like Read Comics Online or something like that to find this whole collection if you want to read everything like I have. But yeah, that's going to be it for this episode of the Marvel and DC retrospective podcast. And I'll see you all next Sunday where we continue Millennium. There's only 2 parts left after this. Part 4 and Part 5, and then that's it. We'll be done with Millennium. So we're over halfway through. Like, this is awesome. I think there's like 16 issues worth left of like content or like something like that. And then we're all done. So I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed these last few tie-ins. Millennium issue 5 wasn't that great, but everything else was pretty alright. This tie-in was a lot better than the last Firestorm tie-in. But yeah, I think the Spectre tie-in was my favorite one. Not only this time, but I think it's my favorite one in general. I really like that tie-in because it's just so fun and weird. But in a good way, not in a bad way, not in a like this hurts my head reading it kind of way, you know. But yeah, I'll see you next time, and yeah, bye.